Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's certainly been a divisive game since its announcement. Set in 16th century Japan towards the end of the Sengoku period, the game will focus on that old struggle that all of the other games do between the Templars and the Assassin's Brotherhood. Now, where this game has caused quite a lot of stir is through its main protagonist being Yasuke, an African samurai inspired by the historical figure by the same name. But is there any actual substance to these complaints and controversies, or is it just a group of ists and phobes that are just complaining? Let's have a deep dive into everything that we know about Assassin's Creed Shadows and see how concerned we really should be. Now, when it comes to Assassin's Creed, I will be completely transparent that it's definitely not my most favourite franchise ever. I absolutely adored the older games, from sort of Assassin's Creed 2 to Assassin's Creed sort of Black Flag. That little spell that they brought out I thought were all very good in their own ways, but I really fell off the franchise in more recent iterations. I remember playing Unity and it was honestly one of the most buggy things I've ever played, and since then I just completely checked out of the franchise. Despite that though, from a gameplay perspective, I do think that Assassin's Creed Shadows looks absolutely awesome. The combat looks sleek and fluid, and it really has a level of sort of intensity to it, like you really feel as if you are clobbering a bloke with a fuck off big sword. I do feel like the Assassin's Creed games have always been really good at showing sort of those death animations that they do, especially when you're fighting multiple enemies and you can chain all those attacks together. This game looks right up there with the rest of them. The world itself does look very immersive, and from an exploration standpoint, it feels as if it's going to be a very fun thing to run around and find various different collectibles, side quests, all that sort of good stuff. Maybe it's enhanced by the setting itself, but the stealth elements of this game look better than what I've seen in any of the other Assassin's Creeds. The ability to sort of hide in the wilderness and sneak up on your enemies isn't anything new or revolutionary, particularly to Assassin's Creed games, but it just looks good. I can't explain it. This trailer really sold me on that aspect of the game. Even visually speaking, the cinematics that we've seen in this game so far look good. There's no real concern in terms of the actual quality there itself, which genuinely for AAA games isn't always the case. So if all those elements are solid, you'd think that this game is going to be good, right? You'd think that people would be excited for its release and are hoping that it sticks the landing from what we've seen so far. However, that is obviously not the case. The main issue, of course, centers around the protagonist of this game, Yasuke, who, despite technically being a historical figure, is not presented accurately whatsoever. Despite technically being a samurai in real life, Yasuke didn't actually ever go into battle once, or didn't even really speak Japanese, so shoving the character to the forefront of the first ever Assassin's Creed game based in Japan has upset a lot of people. Funnily enough, some of the most outraged fans about this choice of protagonist are from the Eastern Hemisphere, who feel like their entire history is being completely misrepresented. Now, this is fully understandable to me because such a large aspect of this game is being built upon such a niche aspect of the country's history, and an inaccurate one at that. However, where I struggle to understand the full extent of the backlash is the fact that Assassin's Creed games themselves have never been historically accurate. I mean, the core of the franchise itself is literally built upon sort of magical items and aliens, for fuck's sake. I mean, it's not exactly like a one-to-one representation of what happened back in the 16th century. And quite frankly, if they'd have taken that route with Yasuke back in that time period, this game would have been boring as shit because he didn't fight anyone. So you can't really blame Ubisoft for having picked that character, making him a badass, right? Personally, I don't really take any issue with the choice of protagonists themselves, as long as A, the storyline is good, and B, it's not woke and tokenistic. Now that is where the big issue comes in with this game. There have been numerous reports that the initial plans for this game were for it to focus around a single Japanese samurai, someone that would more stereotypically fit the aesthetic and the time period that this game is set in. However, these plans were very swiftly changed, and now the main reason that we have Yasuke as the main protagonist in this game is due to, and I quote, the cultural atmosphere in America at the time. Now, that being the reason behind the whole direction of a multi-million-dollar video game is an absolute fucking joke. What has politics got to do with a 16th century Japanese Assassin's game? Fuck all. In essence, the whole point of a video game itself is to escape reality, right? You don't want to sit there and have to worry about real-world issues. So having them woven into a game is just ridiculous. And what's hilarious is Ubisoft clearly intentionally made this decision to try and please fans and the social atmosphere at that time. But in reality, they've just pissed off multiple cultures with this. Not only do a large portion of the Western culture think that this is fucking ridiculous and is just tokenism and is just taking the entire piss, but everyone in the Eastern culture, where this game is set, absolutely despises this decision. I mean, it's literally got to the extent that this game has been questioned in Japanese parliament as to whether it should be sold or not. Ubisoft themselves know they're fucked up because they've literally pulled out of the Tokyo Game Show. And the worst thing is, the fuck-ups don't even stop there. There's been multiple reports that all of the architecture that we've seen throughout the trailers and the gameplay so far is essentially based off Chinese architecture from that time period, instead of Japanese, which is of course where the game is set. So, again, not to get all big on historical inaccuracies and things again, but that's quite a significant thing to get wrong, at least in my eyes. And speaking of things to get wrong, one of the figures that you can buy, like a piece of the memorabilia showing both the new assassin sort of posing, it looks really, really cool. However, it shows the female assassin, I forget her name at this point, posing on a specific Japanese monument. Now, this isn't something that was around in the 16th century, because it's a monument commemorating the World War II nuclear attacks. Now, the fact that Ubisoft have got this so wrong is just cultural insensitivity at this point, surely. Like, you think that somebody would, at the very least, do a small amount of research on that? Now, when you've got all of this noise going on, it's honestly unsurprising that Ubisoft have delayed the release of this game. I mean, initially this was meant to come out next month, but now it's been pushed back until Valentine's Day 2025. Now, Ubisoft have obviously claimed that this time is being used to sort of polish up aspects of the game. Obviously, all the gameplay that we've seen so far is only work in progress, so you've got to think they've got to finish things out. My only question with this is really, how do they now approach all of this backlash? Because if they completely go back on it and change the whole narrative and take it away from Yuzuke, they're going to be absolutely pulverized publicly. And yet, if they don't do that, loads of people are going to still be pissed off with them. So they're kind of in an impossible situation there. I think the most frustrating thing about this whole situation is that Ubisoft didn't have to put themselves in this position whatsoever. I mean, let's be honest, when it comes to stealth open world action games set in Japan, you could literally just copy one of the most successful ones there's ever been, in Ghost of Tsushima. Everyone completely adored that game and it was critically acclaimed for a reason. It was fantastic. So seeing Ubisoft sort of pivot into a more sort of woke agenda with this game is just upsetting, to be honest, because everybody just wants good video games, right? And there's no need for any woke or tokenistic agenda to be placed in there. It's not going to further the narrative whatsoever. It's not going to make the game critically acclaimed in any way. It's just going to be divisive, and that's the big issue. Now, I understand that there's obviously no such thing as bad publicity, but when you look at Ubisoft as a company at the moment, they're in absolute flames. They've received multitudes of backlash on a lot of games recently, looking at your Star Wars Outlaws as for example, and their share prices have absolutely fucking plummeted. So there's no way that they can be happy with how this has been received. Despite all this backlash though, will it actually make too much difference in terms of how successful this game is? I think it will do from a critical perspective and from a sort of internet community perspective, if you want to put it that way. However, I feel like a lot of people forget, and myself included with this, the majority of people that play these games aren't looking up YouTube content for them. They aren't looking at the whole ins and outs and all of the potential controversies and all of the potential political subliminal messaging that's posted and woven within these games. People just want to play them because they want to run around as an assassin and kill people, which quite frankly is what those games are designed to be, and in its truest essence, that is what this game is. So overall, how concerned should we be about Assassin's Creed Shadows? To me, from solely a gameplay perspective itself, I do think this game does look good. It looks like every other Assassin's Creed I've played, and they're enjoyable games. However, Ubisoft have so horribly missed the mark in terms of the protagonist and the historical accuracy surrounding this game, it is beyond a joke, to be honest with you. When the entire purpose of your lead protagonist is to reflect the cultural atmosphere of America during that time, you can't expect your game to be successful. The whole issue with bringing politics into video games is that people have different political views, so they're not going to always agree with the contents that you've implemented. Moving away from the controversial protagonist, I can fully understand why the Japanese audience is pissed off with this game. There is an element of appropriation and just honestly flat out butchering of their culture in this game with the use of different architecture for the buildings, and again, the figure of the bloody nuclear memorial is ridiculous. But more importantly, what do you guys think? What have you made of all of the controversy surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows? Has all of this changed your mind from potentially picking it up when it releases? Let me know all your thoughts down below, and as always, if you are new here and you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. It does mean the absolute world. Anyway, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in another video sometime soon.